This is a journey into sound.
So, good morning to everybody, or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this or listening to this. And we are back. We got to episode number 4 somehow, which
Can't
I'm
believe
quite
it.
amazed at. So it's welcome from me, Duncan, from Back Away from the Donkey, and Al from Big Al Does BookTube. And
Hello.
we're just gonna sort of leap into it and work out what we're doing. So, Al, I'll start with you then. So, what have you been reading?
It's been a bit of a mix, mostly fantasy this month rather, but it's been a bit of a mix. I did some more Stephen King because I've been reading The Dark Tower, so I started reading Eyes of the Dragon, which is kind of like a Dark Tower adjacent novel. I'm trying to do this reading series of reading for The Dark Tower that incorporates about 30 books rather than just the main 7, just because I haven't read a lot of Stephen King, and from what I've read so far, he's really good. So I'm trying to find a way to incorporate more Stephen King that's not just Dark Tower books. Yeah, that was really, really good. It's kind of written almost like a classic fairy tale, and the prose is, I would say, similar to like a YA prose, but the themes and the delivery are very much not classic fairy tale, not YA. It's really, really smartly put together. I think it's probably underappreciated, to be fair. Have you ever read?
I've read quite a bit of King, but I've never read any of his sort of fancy ones. Like, for me, his best novel was Salem's Lot, which what a
novel! Amazing.
Which, as far as I'm concerned, is the best vampire novel ever. Even better than Dracula.
Like, it's so good.
Yeah. The Green Mile I've read, which goes on a bit too long, I think. The Stand I like, but I like the original one before he added about 300 pages to it.
the 300 pages are so bizarre. I can't help it. I do love them. But again, for me, because I'm younger, the references from 1990 make a lot more sense to me. Because I don't remember 1978 or whatever it was. So, that was like 5 years before I was born. So those references are a little lost on me compared to the 1990 references. So it works a lot better for me personally.
Yeah, and that's most of the King I've read. I've just sort of bits of something going along. So I've not really read any of his fantasy. But I think, in reality, most of his horror is fantasy, isn't it? It's not. It's not really sort of hardcore horror. It's more creepiness, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know where this genre came from, but a lot of people on BookTube talk now about speculative fiction. And if anyone is speculative fiction, it is Stephen King.
Like all fiction is all fiction speculative fiction. I hate the term.
This is it. Yeah, I know, but they seem to be talking specifically about that kind of Neil Gaiman, close to real life, but something's a bit off.
What used to be speculative fiction was people writing science fiction who didn't want to admit they wrote science fiction.
Exactly right.
Like Margaret Atwood always claimed that all her stuff was speculative fiction. No, it was science fiction. Most of it's sort of social based, but it was science fiction. But and it's all the genres get confused now anyway. People just sort of chuck the names around and nobody knows what they're talking about, really.
And then people make really, really long videos on BookTube talking for 2 hours about why this book's a part of the genre and the other book isn't. And it's interesting. I like the conversation around genre, because the lines are so blurry. It really doesn't matter. But
I think
it's just fiction and non-fiction, right?
Sorry,
non-fiction, it's really fiction and non-fiction.
Yeah. It's like when you start to get to literary fiction, it's like the lines are really sort of blurred here.
Yeah, or historical fiction, because sometimes half of it is non-fiction and the other half is fiction.
Yeah, and then with fantasy thrown in the middle of it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Iliad or something.
Yeah.
Which of course is probably more the fact that they believed these gods existed, but they don't.
But life's too short to argue over genres. It's just like,
yeah.
So that's your main reading. Has it been on?
Well, I read a quick Conan story, probably how Conan story, but I haven't got the review up yet, and I just got finished with book 4 in Poirot, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. I wanted to get this in for March Mystery Mayhem, or no, March Mystery Madness. It's Horror Mayhem, isn't it? I get those two confused all the time, those two reading events. But my TBR's just been completely shot by all those giant fantasy books, so I'm a little bit out of sync with everyone else, really. But yeah, those three are probably took up most of my month. Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, well, I've been doing a lot of ape stuff, as you know, which actually my ape stuff is bleeding into May. I'm going to have to do an epilogue to it.
Yeah.
Because I've got some, at the beginning of the month, I got really busy, so I wasn't able to release all the videos I wanted to do. So I've got about 4 or 5 videos hung over.
Oh, okay. So every couple of days, we're going to get fed an ape video.
So I'm probably going to filter, as long as Roy lets me, because he's the big honcho, but he'll be fine. I'm going to sort of bleed those over sort of May, I think, sort of one a week or something. It's because I've watched so many dodgy films and things, but also I discovered that there's a Kong animated TV series from 2000.
Is there?
Yes, it's got 41 episodes.
So wait, right before they released that weird Godzilla one that no one seems to watch.
Yeah, this came out, I think, about 2000. There's 41 episodes. I've managed to get hold of them all. So I want to watch that to see if it's any good.
Someone has to do it, you know.
Yeah. So they did that, and apparently afterwards, when Peter Jackson released his ridiculously long version of King Kong, they then released like a animated movie thing to try and cash in. So I want to watch those, whether I have time to. And then
I wonder if the animation is actually any good, or whether there's so few frames. Is it quite smooth?
It's not too bad. I think it's Japanese. Well, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay. Yeah,
it's a mix of Japanese and I think it's a amalgamation between some Japanese animation house and some US one, I think. But I wouldn't quote me on that. I haven't looked deeply into it. So so that's some more Kong stuff I've got coming. But I've not read huge amounts. I read the King Kong book. I've read a few other little bits. Non-Kong things I've done. I read Harry Harrison's memoir, which was really good.
You're a big fan of Harry Harrison, right?
Yeah, I like Harry Harrison.
He's one of your go-to
Stainless Steel Rat, and all his even serious stuff is good. But what's really funny is there's some bits in there when he joins the army, just for the Second World War, and they're being examined, and basically they're naked because they've been having this medical exam. And this scene is directly out of one of the Stainless Steel Rat books. So he obviously took this experience.
So he lifted his own experience. Yeah.
But he's a really interesting guy because he lived all over the world. He lived in Holland. He lived in Ireland. Lived in obviously America because he was American. He was an artist. He was head of the Esperanto Association. He was obsessed with Esperanto because that's in most of his works. But no, it's a really good, because sometimes these memoirs are a bit dull, but that was actually really quite good.
But yeah, he lived a fairly interesting life then.
Yeah, so he moved around.
Yeah.
What else have I read? I started The Wheel of Time, as you know.
Yes.
Which I blame you
about that in a bit, actually.
Yeah. And I've also done some comics. I've been reading the Judge Dredd files, which I've been wading through. I've got some Star-Lord that I've just got that I'm going to be wading through soon, because this is Star-Lord before he got famous with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and everybody had heard of him, the original one. And I managed to pick up some really, really old comics, because it appeared for me when I used to get the Star Wars film adaptation in the comic form in 1978, because I'm that old. In the back of it was Star-Lord, and that's where I knew him from. And I sort of read it a bit through the year because it's all spread out all over the place. And when the Guardians of the Galaxy released, I thought, is this the same character? And I sort of, and it is. And they've just sort of changed it over the years. But the original ones are quite interesting in how they've changed him. And Chris Claremont wrote a load of stuff for him. And there was Jim Byrne did a lot of the artwork for it. And I've got one which has got this beautiful double page spread, which is like a stunning piece of artwork. I just wish it was in color. So I'm probably going to do a load of stuff on that in the future. Because I don't think I've ever seen anybody talk about Star-Lord.
No, it's a funny one. I'd heard of the name Star-Lord in comics before I'd really grasped that he was part of Guardians of the Galaxy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know how long his name floated around, like you say, almost separately to Guardians of the Galaxy. Because by the time those kind of big cross universe novels were coming out, like Infinity Gauntlet and stuff like that in the 80s. Obviously, by then, you start to hear more about Guardians of the Galaxy, but it didn't feel like that they were necessarily connected originally. At least not in my mind. I don't know if we necessarily got all of the comic book runs that the US did at the time. Maybe
the problem is they spread them out, and a lot of them weren't in trade paperbacks or stuff like that. So you find little bits of it all over the place. There was a short sort of mini series, about 4 comics, done at the back end of the 90s that was written by Timothy Zahn of Star Wars fame.
Oh yeah, I know the guy.
Yeah, so those I actually found copies, and they are on their way to me. Some guy was selling all his comic book collection. Oh dear, poor man, and had those up for a really good price, really cheap actually. And so that's winging its way to me, and I'd be interested to read that.
He's quite highly rated, right? Timothy Zahn.
His Star Wars books, he basically kept Star Wars going. When Return of the Jedi ended in 83, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Sort of interest faded out, and there wasn't much around, bar the Ewok movies, which are...
Look, I love the Ewok movies.
Yeah,
and I love droids as well. Because obviously that's my era, So
but by that it sort of faded out. But he sort of kept it all going, which is where Grand Admiral Thrawn came from, and things like that. And his writing and his non-Star Wars stuff is good as well. And I think if it wasn't for him, I doubt a lot of the stuff would have happened. Like in the prequels, Coruscant, the main capital, that is one of his names that he invented. And a load of the stuff in the prequels was from his work.
Yeah.
But it was that, and there was a Star Wars role-playing game that they produced in the 90s as well. And that Star Wars role-playing game, literally the people, when they were doing the prequels, used that as a Bible for all the stuff in the background so they could work out what was going on.
Yes, it's funny how that works, how someone comes along and picks up someone else's work and they become canon themselves.
Yeah.
And I was talking to Mike the other day about Alan Lee, his artwork for The Lord of the Rings, and how throughout the 80s and 90s, he's the only person that basically touched the art for Lord of the Rings. And how, because he was creative director on the movies, how his artwork basically is it's everything people think about when they think about Lord of the Rings. Because obviously the original Tolkien artwork's very reductive, isn't it? It's very he made very simple illustrations of what he was trying to get at. And then several artists kind of took it in the 50s, 60s and 70s, and all their art looks completely different. And I think it wasn't until Alan Lee kind of nailed it all down, and then the movies, he obviously influenced what the movies look like, and they just look like his paintings, to be fair. So
well, his paintings are very ethereal and otherworldly, and which is what works really well for the Lord of the Rings things. But as you said, most people, especially in the 80s and 90s, if you asked about a Lord of the Rings artist, would immediately Alan Lee.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I thought of. So when I started seeing all of the older editions, it was really strange to me, because he'd been working on it since, like, I don't know, 84 or something. So everything I'd always seen had always been Alan Lee. So
I've got a copy of the Silmarillion with art by Ted Naismith, who's a Canadian artist, and the artist in that is absolutely gorgeous. But he's just not as well known as obviously Alan Lee.
Yeah,
and
that's the difficulty, because when it comes to, like, especially costumes, I think, and kind of like the tone, as in like the tone and the shades of like the the paints and the pastels and stuff like that, everyone's gonna just imagine those costumes and stuff that Alan Lee came up with, because they're used in the movies now. I think the movies have taken over the zeitgeist as far as Lord of the Rings goes, unfortunately, for a lot of people. So,
but you get the same way as something like Alan Moore. His version of Batman is the one everybody thinks of. From The Dark Knight. Which is all.
It's not necessarily a bad thing, because a lot of the time they are these are good representations. Like what's the other one? It was like Frank Miller's Daredevil, wasn't it? It's like
Yes,
there tends to be a run of, it could be it is like a run of every character that's the most popular, and everyone just goes back to that as the standard. For me, like, this is a really weird one, but for me, Spider-Man will always be that original cartoon run of Spider-Man with all the reused frames and stuff. I can't not see that as Spider-Man. Despite the thousands of Spider-Man comics I've read, I can't picture that as Spider-Man. It can only be that very early cartoon series.
See, I think of the probably nobody else knows these but me. They released 3 or 4 films of Spider-Man in the late 70s.
Oh no, I've watched them.
Yes,
and he has that rope, right? And he always wears flares and stuff. Oh man, I
Nicholas
love
Hammond was
that
the actor.
first Spider-Man movie. I love that movie. I absolutely loved it. I used to watch that like on a daily loop. I think my mum.
Because it was a TV series, and they amalgamated them into films. And I saw the first one in the cinema with my sister.
Yeah,
my sister took me. My sister fell asleep. I remember that. Which was but they are lots of. It's got lots of him sort of climbing walls in weird ways, and there's obviously a rope pulling the guy up, isn't there? Which is quite hilarious. And also, he was about mid-20s to late 20s, wasn't he? He's way too old for Spider-Man as well.
Oh yeah, he now come on, he must have been 30. He must have been 30. I look back at it, he's pretends to be a student at the start, and he's buying parts, right, for the lab, and he's like, I'm not buying this guy as a student. He's like 32 years old. It's like 32-year-old, 15-year-old.
Yeah,
it reminds me of the Fonz, like in the later years of the Happy Days or something. Like how the Fonz is like 4 years old.
Yeah, I can't believe somebody else has actually seen those.
Yeah, no, yeah, there wasn't much on TV in the UK back then, was there? Really? So
no, not really.
You watch what you got.
What you got?
It made me think about as well. I really loved the the Hulk TV series, with Lou Ferrigno and all that. But they made like a TV movie which included 4.
Oh yes, I've seen that.
By this point, the series was way past its sell-by date. This was probably pushing 1990 by the time they released this TV movie, and it was rubbish. It was so bad, but I loved it. I remember, oh wow, Thor and Hulk in the same show, kind of thing.
Yeah, but to me, that is always the Hulk for me.
Yeah.
Because I was never big into like superhero comics anyway. At that point, and when the TV series came on, I pictured the Hulk like that. So when you see in the comics when he grows incredibly big, and I thought that's too big for the Hulk, isn't it? Because I was imagining the size of Lou Ferrigno.
That's the thing, because like that Hulk at the time in the comics, and for everything up into the 80s, I suppose, like the Golden and Silver Age Hulk kind of just looked like Frankenstein. He had like the square head. He wasn't really he wasn't really massive like he is in, I don't think, in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, I think Lou Ferrigno was more impressive on screen than the Hulk was in the comics at the time. Controversial opinion.
Yeah, I don't know how we got onto comics, but
I don't know where we are. Where we're as far as format goes, we've definitely lost the thread there.
We've definitely lost it. I think we might have a specific format and try and stick to it, but it won't work. So yeah, that's basically my reading, because I've gone through short stories. I'm trying to, because I'm still struggling, not with time, just not motivation, even just struggling to read.
Same. Yeah.
And I said I finished the memoir, kept me going, and I was looking around yesterday. I thought, I need to start something, and then I thought I really would like something a bit epic, and which is when I saw the Wheel of Time books in there, and I thought,
I mean, you've chosen pain, my friend, because that's a really long series. That's a really long series.
I thought, well, I could read the first one and then just do the other ones. And...
Oh yeah, so it's only like 850 pages or something.
But yeah, it's like I've avoided them, and like it was published in 1990-ish, wasn't it?
Yeah, 90. Yeah.
And I remember seeing them on shelves, and I remember hating the cover, and I remember not picking up because I was reading quite a bit of fantasy around that time, and I remember not picking up because I hated the cover. And then through the years, it's got more and more popular, the series. And the past few years on YouTube and BookTube, people have been saying how wonderful it is, and I've sort of got very contrary and thought, I'm not reading that. It's just annoying me now. All these people talking about it.
Yeah.
And I said I'm probably going to read it and think, why did I not read this years ago?
Mm-hmm.
But I've already read a couple of chapters of it so far. So far, I've read some Robert Jordan before because I've read his Conan pastiches, which for me actually originally, I didn't realize that he didn't originally invent Conan.
Well,
I
mean, he did.
They were the
run
first
for a
books
long
I ever
time,
picked
right?
up for Conan.
Yeah.
So I've read all his Conan pastiches, and I think have I read all of them? Probably. And I've always really quite liked them. So I know what his sort of writing style. So this is quite different. It starts off quite different, but
it's very traditional.
And also I'm trying to get
quite slow starting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also trying to get the picture of the Amazon TV series out of my brain as well.
Oh yeah, no. The thing is, I was lucky enough to read a few of the books before the series kicked off. So luckily, because I think I was midway through book 2 when the series kicked off.
Yeah.
I luckily managed to get my own imagination in just before the show.
Yeah.
But what I do have in my head sometimes is that some characters I have what I imagined from the books, and some are what I've seen in the show. Like Nynaeve, I can't think of her other than the lady in the show now. That's cemented in my head now.
I've not got to the second season yet. Anyway,
what of the show?
No, we keep.
Well, I was going to say actually, when we get to what we've watched, I've actually watched the first episode of the second season now.
Yeah, I don't know why. I think we just got waylaid because watching other things.
Yeah, same. We went down a rabbit hole of. Have you heard of this? I'll just grab the book quickly. Have you heard of Michael Connelly's Bosch series? It's like a detective series.
I watched the first season.
Yeah,
I did when it was on Netflix, and I know there's about 4 or 5 seasons of them. I really liked it because
I think there's about 7 now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the first 2 seasons are very much in that kind of old style of detective show, like NYPD Blue or whatever. But halfway through the original run, they change massively to more like character-driven narrative and less kind of like villain of the week stuff. And now it got re-released as he's basically a private detective now. He's not a detective anymore.
Yeah, so I think at the end of he was accused of murder or something. I think at the end of the first season.
Oh, he's always accused of. Yeah, he's well off the reservation. Is Harry Bosch, but yeah, I'm going to start reading the books later this year because I'm running out of TV episodes to watch now. I'm in the final season now, which is I think about season 7. And yeah, me and my wife just watch it constantly. So yeah, I've not watched too much that's not Bosch recently. The occasional episode of Shogun or Wheel of Time, but it's
Have you finished Shogun yet?
No. I'm 3 episodes behind. But obviously I've read it, so you can't spoil it. Yeah. So just feel free to talk about as much as you want.
Yeah, no, finished it this week.
Yeah.
There's a scene, I can't remember if it's in the book because I haven't read the book for years, decades, where Mariko is leaving Osaka.
Okay.
And that is stunning. Yeah. Whoever shot that is just like, for me, that is a standout scene of the whole series.
Well, that's the thing. You get no cinematography when you read the book, right? It's just your imagination is that up here is the cinematographer, right? So I'm going to look forward to all of those shots for sure because you have to imagine them, right? When you read, so.
Yeah, so she's trying to leave Osaka, so-called, because Toranaga has told her to, and they're trying to stop her because they're trying to keep them prisoner, but they're trying not to admit that they're keeping everybody prisoner. Yeah. But that scene is absolutely stunning, and it goes on for about 10 minutes or so, and that for me is the highlight of the whole thing. So when you get to that, I'd be interested to see what you think of it. It's been a really, really good.
If it's the bit I'm thinking of, I remember it well from the book because it's very. It becomes very tense.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I can imagine that they were looking forward to filming that part of the book.
Yeah, it's shot so well, and the actor who's playing Mariko, I don't even know her name. She's so good at it. Yeah, and she's so good there, and it was definitely the highlight. They did such a good job on that series. My wife,
if every series was treated with that much respect, I mean,
respect, it's such respect to the source, and I said I like the original Richard Chamberlain one, but this is far and far better because it just goes far more depth, and it's just so well done. And even the way they've obviously done the effects and all the visual effects and that, but the way they've introduced them all to it, it's all seamless. You don't nothing jarring as an obvious visual effect that's going to annoy you or anything. They've just done such a good job. I don't know how much it cost, but it must have cost.
I can't imagine it was cheap. Just I think the shots, with the ships, and the amount of guys they've got on screen in costume all the time.
Yeah.
Even when you know that 90% of this background has to be CG.
Yeah.
What they have in shot in the foreground is so crazy already, budget wise.
Oh yeah,
it draws the eye and makes it, irrelevant.
The costumer must have been.
Oh.
They must have trying to get it, and they probably went to trying to get it historically accurate as well. It was. So I'll finish that.
Yeah, they've got the people on costume duty have to be up for an award, right? There has to be like a TV award for like best costumes. It's got to win. It's got to win.
It's probably. I know we're only into we hate April, May. It's about to hit May, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. Put it one way, it's going to take a lot to beat that as the best thing I've seen this year.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. I really do think it's going to take a lot. Because the other thing I started watching Fallout. Watched the first couple of episodes of that.
Oh, that is my list. I haven't because I'm trying to finish Bosch, and I've added a few things to my list now. It's starting to get.
That's fun. I've got the game, but I've never played it.
Oh yeah, I mean they're great fun. They're great fun.
I know.
Even right back to the original PC one, they just the comedy is.
Yeah, I picked up the game
really,
a while ago.
Really tongue in cheek and dark,
For the 360, and I've just not got around to playing it. I just haven't had time. So yeah, Fallout. Waiting through my Superman for Smallville. We're still wading our way through that slowly. I think we're up to about season 3, season 4. We're still on.
That's around the time I dropped out when it was first about. Yeah, I think I watched about.
Good Lex Luthor, because I know he's going to go evil at one point. I like good Lex Luthor.
Yeah, he's a good actor in this series. To be fair,
apparently he does recording. I think
some of them are a bit dialed in, but he's pretty good throughout. To be fair,
I think Roy mentioned it to me, the fact that he. I think Rosenberg. I think he might have mentioned it last time actually, that he does a podcast.
He does. Yeah, I've seen some of those episodes.
But though he's not, the fact that people don't know he's Superman is starting to annoy me a little bit because he's been really, really obvious.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, just never.
That as a child, that used to annoy me about the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. I was just like, it's clearly him. Look, he only took his glasses off.
That's the whole thing. He's a different person with his glasses off.
No. But I did appreciate in those movies, at least, he tried to act as two completely different people, personality-wise, at least. He's such a bumbling fool as Clark Kent, which I thought makes no sense really, but at least it did help to differentiate them.
Yeah, I rewatched those recently, actually, a few months back. And that's when I realised I'd not seen the final one, which I thought I had, which I wish I'd not seen now.
Those first three are so watchable still for me.
Yeah, even the one with Richard Pryor, which some people don't like.
How can you not like Richard Pryor?
And film-wise, I watched Oppenheimer the other day, and I really didn't like it.
Oh, really? I quite enjoyed that.
It's not. Well, the first 40 minutes, I almost bailed because it was just so deadly slow. And then it got more interesting. I think Cillian Murphy was fantastic in it. But it just got to. I think it was all the timelines all over the shot were just annoying me.
Yeah,
and I just wanted them to tell the story and not. And I like Christopher Nolan. I like Christopher Nolan a lot, but I just wanted him to tell the story straightforwardly.
Yeah, I don't know. He obviously struggled to storyboard that movie. I think that's quite apparent, and he obviously felt the way to make it most compelling was going to be to make cuts backwards and forwards in time, and get people to pick, kind of let it come together by the end. What can you do? is there a better way to put it together? I don't know. I wouldn't want to criticize it because I enjoyed it. But yeah, the hardest part of that must have been storyboarding it, because, like you say, if you just put it in a linear sequence, is it even slower than it already is? Because it is quite slow. I'm sure they must have edited it over and over.
Yeah, the first 40 minutes, it was like, oh dear. It's and then I think when Matt Damon appeared, that's when it started to get a bit more interesting.
Yeah, because otherwise it's kind of just like, you know, what's his history, what's his backstory kind of thing, isn't it?
There was a BBC miniseries in about 1980 with Sam Waterston in it, which Oppenheimer, obviously not based on the same book, because the book came out I think 2005 that they based the film on, and I remember that being pretty good. And that was just, but that would obviously probably just be a normal linear narrative of the story of Oppenheimer. But they did a lot of, BBC did a lot of stuff around about then. They did one on the guys that discovered the double helix in DNA at the same time as well. There's a few things around about there. So I'd quite like to see that Oppenheimer one, just to see if it's as good as I remember it, because my memory could be playing tricks on me and I could watch it and it could be terrible. But I understand what Nolan was going for, but it didn't quite work for me. And the performances were great, but the editing, and I think what didn't help was at the beginning you didn't know where in time the flashbacks and the flash forwards were. So I think there's 4 timelines going on at the beginning.
There's a few, yeah.
Because you were flashing back to pre-war, then you were back into the beginning of the war, then you were doing to the Atomic Energy Commission, and then you're doing, pardon me, then you're doing to the bit when the guy's trying to be a senator, but you couldn't work out, and because he put it in black and white, your initial thought is, oh, that's before, but it wasn't. It was after.
I have to say, I thought it was better than Killers of the Flower Moon.
I've not seen that actually.
Yeah, if you want to talk about like long epics that came out around that time, I would say that was the better of them. But it's hard for me to criticize, even though the storyboarding was a bit challenging in that movie. Like it's hard for me to criticize a movie like that when obviously we've just had Godzilla X Kong and we've had Ghostbusters.
We had lots of rubbish, yes.
The Ice One or whatever it's called. And you know, we watch these movies, they're too throwaway, really. And I love a popcorn movie. You know, I love a popcorn movie. You know, you can put me down in front of anything. You know, Tango
I'm
and
hoping
Cash.
the new Planet of the Apes film is going to sort of fill the void of decent popcorn movies.
Yeah,
that's all I can hope, because it looks good. Or the have you seen the trailers for the Deadpool Wolverine one?
Oh, that looks hilarious.
It looks like to me, it looks like it's going to revitalize.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll deliver it just like they have before.
But I just hope it's going to revitalize superheroes, because the superheroes films are all struggling and they're all don't know what to do with them. I think post Endgame, people have struggled not knowing what to do.
It's strange that as the Marvel stuff has become very convoluted and a little bit inconsistent in quality, that DC have decided to drop what they were doing and just focus on putting out art house pieces. Like they let Zack Snyder come back and retouch up all the stuff that they made him reshoot, you know, and then they come out with Joker and they come out with the Batman, and all of a sudden, in my opinion, they are leading the way now. And you know, DC are up here, and then Marvel are really struggling to catch up, in my opinion, now, which is
I really like the Joker.
Joker's
I really like the Joker,
amazing.
and I really did, and I wasn't up for a musical for the second one, but now I am.
What? It's a musical?
Yeah, mainly.
Oh, I'm totally on board for that.
I don't know whether it's 100%
I'm expecting something like Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Now
that's why they got Lady Gaga in there, I think.
Right.
Who's playing Harley Quinn.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for the character, for sure.
So I wasn't originally up for that when they said it, but now I saw a trailer, and that's the only trailer I'm going to watch.
I have not seen a trailer, but
I thought, okay, this is going to be
very
quite
excited.
So I'm quite excited about it. But saying that, the last DC one, the Birds of Prey, I really liked, which a lot of people didn't.
Was that the new Harley Quinn one? Was it?
Yes.
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah, I have seen
they
that.
changed the title. The title was a brilliant title to start with, and then they put it to Birds of Prey because they said it was confusing everybody. I don't think it was, but
yeah, because it was like the name had Harley Quinn in it, right?
Yeah,
it was like a yeah. I can't remember what the name
linked.
was, but yeah, I saw that. I thought that was fine.
Yeah,
it was all right.
Yeah, it wasn't the best film ever, but I really quite enjoyed it, and I know a lot of people didn't. But yeah, so that's been any other weird nonsense I've watched recently. No, that's about it, really. I haven't had time to do anything else. So I'm just having a quick look. I did make a few vague notes.
I will say, I think the best movie I watched in the last 6 months is quite an obscure pick, but it's The Iron Claw, a movie about the Von Erich wrestling family. It's insane. It's so good. The acting, the directing, the cinematography is crazy. It's quite comfortably the best movie I've seen in the last 6 months. I thought it was better than Oppenheimer as well, which will annoy a lot of people. But yeah, don't judge it until you've watched it, because it might not be the subject matter that you're interested in, but as a movie, it's crazy.
My worry was I watched Queen Kong this week, and I enjoyed it more than Oppenheimer.
What's that say about yourself? That's the question.
Know it is really, really bizarre. I am going to do a full video on this film, because it's really, really, it is. At one point, I think it wants to be a musical, and then you've got people like Rula Lenska in there, who's the main thing. Is a gender swapped British sort of vague sex comedy in the sort of vague Confessions one, but then it does all this weird parody stuff, because it came out before Airplane and the Kentucky Fried Movie, which like started all the parodies.
Yeah, that's right. So
films.
what we're saying is like one of the originating.
But it's got in the middle of it. It's got a parody of the singing nun scene from Airport, which is also there's a parody of that obviously in Airplane, and there's this weird thing with Lady Jaws, and it is one of the most indescribable films I've ever seen. And you're sitting there thinking, I really want this to be over with, because it's just too out there. But then it's only weird, 90 minutes. But it's like, it's bad, but there's bits about it that you think, okay. And they filmed a load of it in Tuctonia, which was a model village in Christchurch near Bournemouth. That I went to as a child. And to make the ape look huge. But what's quite interesting is the story behind it is the director. He directed 2 films, that one and one about a mummy film, which I've not been able to see. And then he went on to be a producer. And there was a bunch of quite good stuff that he produced, including there's a mini series produced for South Africa about a Zulu king who basically fought against the British when the British were there, which had people like Robert Powell in and Edward Fox in, and they were nearly blackballed at the time by the UN for working in South Africa, because apartheid was in place at the time.
Yeah, of course, yeah, it was a big.
So he
big
produced
issue,
that, and then he went on and the producer, and he was nearly put in prison for fraud at one point. He died about the age of 90. He was an Israeli. But the story behind him is quite fascinating when you start looking.
Yeah, it sounds like a movie in itself. That.
Yeah, it's probably more interesting than the Queen Kong movie. But yeah, it was a really, really, really strange film. And is that probably the worst one I've seen? I don't know whether it's the worst one I've seen, but it was probably better than Kong versus Godzilla.
There you go.
I think
that really is a comment there now.
Yeah. Because the more I think about the Kong Godzilla one, the more I think, I think I was too kind on it when I talked about it.
What's so weird is that you guys have picked such an oddball kind of. It's so specific a theme for this reading event and this watching event. Yeah. I feel like you guys are basically preserving this stuff for science at this point, because no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to touch it.
I've watched more than I've read, because I didn't have huge amounts. I've got one other reading thing. I'll show you. There. I have got this. Oop, put it in front of the camera.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Do you remember this? At the back end of the 1970s, early 80s, everybody was obsessed with the paranormal. And there was a magazine called The Unexplained. And Arthur C. Clarke got into it. Well, they grabbed him anyway. And they did a TV program called The Mysterious World. And it's him going around to all these unexplained things. And in the middle of it, there's a thing about giant apes. I've actually got the TV episode as well. But this book that was written, a really funny thing about it, is written by people, and they go through all these unexplained things like the Bermuda Triangle, like the giant apes, famous footage you see, and they go through all the evidence and what have you. And at the end, basically, Arthur C. Clarke puts a little paragraph at the end, and basically he says to everyone, "That's just a load of rubbish." That's basically what he says.
I love
That's what
it.
he paraphrases. That's paraphrasing him, but he sort of goes convoluted and said, "There's all this evidence and what have you," but there isn't any evidence.
For me, that stuff comes to a head when they started the X-Files series. You know, that was such a huge part of being a teenager for me, because it started when I was at senior school, and basically, if you came into school having not watched the latest episode of X-Files, you were basically, you know, a social leper. You know, no one wanted to talk to you because you didn't watch the most recent episode of the X-Files. So that's always been in my head. That's the kind of peak of that stuff.
Yeah, well, Rosie is actually rewatching the X-Files at the moment.
We began rewatching it, but my eldest daughter now wants to watch it all with us, so we've got to wait, you know, and pick the moments now.
Because every now and then I hear one in the background, and I go and see the episode. I vaguely remember that episode, but I think I probably bailed around about season 2 or 3, so I don't think I've watched them all.
Yeah, I know I missed some episodes before the movie came out, which was like 97. So I must have missed some episodes in like 96 somewhere or 97 somewhere. But I've watched it through a couple of times. But those episodes I missed on the initial run are always the ones I struggle to recall.
You forget how annoying Scully is in the beginning.
Oh yeah,
when there's all the stuff in front of her, and she goes, "Oh, I still don't believe it."
Yeah, and that goes for a little while as well. It's like a season and a half where she's super annoying until she starts to get broken down. Yeah, it's true. But I didn't mind because I had a giant Gillian Anderson poster on my wall in the 90s because I might have been a bit in love. So so I didn't mind so much.
But yeah, so that I think is all my reading and stuff. Have you done any? And that's all yours done.
Yeah,
I've not really seen much booktubey stuff around recently.
I've seen a lot of Giant April.
Yeah, a lot of Giant April. I've got a big playlist which I'll put a link to at the bottom with. I think it's got 99% of everybody's stuff on it.
Yeah,
I tried to do, and I said I'm doing an epilogue because I've got stuff that's linked over. I said the problem with Giant April is I ended up not reading huge amounts. I ended up watching more than I was reading. Yeah. So I've missed doing some nice book stuff. I was meant to be recording a load of stuff yesterday, which I didn't. I ended up reading and taking dogs for a walk. I had a free day, and I thought, oh, I'll do that instead. And I've got some videos that I was meant to release before that I hadn't finished editing. I read the whole of a Philip Jose Farmer story after King Kong fell, which is really hard to get hold of. So I thought, okay, I'll do a reading of it. So I've read it all, but I'm editing the audio on it, and it's just taking me time and to do it. And then I've got to work out what visuals to put with it as well. So I thought, oh dear, I've got done some editing.
The thing is now, because now your thing is editing. Slick editing.
I don't want to be editing.
No, I know, but you can't help yourself now. You always want to have some nice visuals. Like, I'm gonna miss the Kong intro with Jeff Bridges shouting Kong. That's Giant April for me now.
Yeah, well, I keep going on. I'll keep it on the epilogue. I'll whack an epilogue thing at the end of it. But no, Jeff Bridges shouting. I came across that clip. Where did I come across? I was looking through because I didn't have the whole film on digitally. I found it in one of the trailers for it with him shouting Kong. I thought, okay. And the bit with the guard beforehand is from Return of King Kong, which is the one when they've the one with what's the name? Woman from Terminator.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh wow, I'm terrible with names.
Yeah,
Linda Hamilton. Linda Hamilton.
Yes, she's in it.
Yeah.
It's not a good film because Kong gets pregnant or something, and it's a really strange film, and that was what that bit it was from. So I've done that, and I'm trying to edit that, and that's taking me longer. And so I was just amazed. I was just so impressed with Roy, the amount of stuff he managed to get out, and the amount of stuff he found as well.
He's clearly been digging at this for a while. This wasn't a spare at the moment. He's been been festering in his mind for about 12 months, I reckon.
Yeah. Well, he mentioned it to me probably February, the first time he mentioned it to me. But I said I think it's been festering for about a year.
Yeah.
To get all that stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah. But even Annie from Obscure Book Adventures, she had a load of really interesting stuff. I've got to do a live stream with her later about Giant Ape. We're going to round up what we've done and what we've learned about giant apes.
Yeah.
If you can learn anything about giant apes.
It's funny. Annie's one of those people I'm subscribed to that her videos don't appear in my feed very often. Do you ever get people like that where you subscribe to them and you feel like, well, I might have to go in and click a bell or something because these person's videos don't appear in my feed often enough. I'll see like one video a month maybe. Like Sarah Reed's is another one. Like I've been subscribed for her for years, but I have to go and look for her videos because they just don't appear on my feed. It's weird.
Every now and then I think I've not seen anything from that person for ages, and I end up searching for them thinking, have I missed all this stuff?
Yeah, exactly. Like have they stopped making videos? But sometimes they haven't. It's just for some reason your feed it's the same kind of 4 or 5 people hit your feed sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't understand how it works. All these algorithms.
No. Dark arts. Definitely dark arts. Yeah.
I see. I don't know if you've seen that Brian Lee Durfee's out of hospital now.
Yeah, I haven't watched the videos. I haven't had much of a chance to watch.
He's at home with his cat, so now.
Yeah, I saw a thumbnail of him at home with his cat. So
yeah,
but I see he's still still taking liquid food or something. But lots of it. But...
Yeah, he's still got an NG tube up his nose.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Yeah, so hopefully he's on the mend rather than
Well,
I wouldn't want to speculate really. It's
Yeah, you can't speculate, but it's just nice to see that he's home, that they've got him out of hospital. I just made me laugh. Every video he did, he's lying in his bed in hospital with all this stuff around him, and he's going, author of The Killing Moon from Saga Press. Doing his
He doesn't take a day off.
No, it's hilarious. No. I think he's got to the point now that he thinks, I've got to say this now. People expect it of me.
Yeah, it wouldn't be the same without it. It's kind of his unofficial intro, isn't it? So
yeah. Have you read his books at all?
I have not.
No, because I know
I did actually see one in the wild the other day as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah, which I'm shocked by. I thought I'd have to order it online.
I haven't. I saw a review from Mike from Mike's Book Reviews, and he really liked it. And I sort of he's one of my go-to ones for modern fantasy, I think, because he reads a lot more modern fantasy than I ever do. So I'm always quite interested in his opinion.
He's the first booktuber I ever found. So I wouldn't. I found out about booktube from people at work, but when I first kind of typed in to try and find the booktube video, that's the first thing I found was one of his. Quite an old one now, but yeah. So yeah, he's got a massive channel, isn't he? So I'm sure I'm not alone in finding him.
No.
Early doors.
Yeah, I don't know. So you got much coming up soon, have you?
I'm still putting out primer videos for the Winds of Winter.
Yes, I've been watching those.
In hope, there's a weird subset of human beings who spend large parts of their time trying to figure out if Winds of Winter is coming out anytime soon. I'm one of those people, and there's been some interesting comments made by George recently that makes us believe that the final draft has gone to the publisher for editing.
Yeah.
So anytime from about, I don't know, probably September this year onwards, we might get an announcement. So that's kind of sparked my interest again. So I've just been going and reading chapters and digging into wikis and falling down rabbit holes on forum threads, and so I'll put some of that stuff out, and hopefully going to talk to you about some Philip K. Dick.
Yes,
which is may become my new passion project. I think, I don't know.
Oh,
I'm gonna release a video in a few weeks' time talking about science fiction, because I think I'm gonna have to change my TBR. It dawned on me that when I made my favorite books videos a month or two ago, that the top video books, more than 25% of them were sci-fi. And why hadn't I read more sci-fi? If every time I seem to pick a sci-fi book up, I love it. Why don't I read more? So I'm going to have to put a video out discussing that and what I plan to read and stuff, I think, because, yeah, the last few sci-fi books I've read have been really, really good. So, yeah, I'll probably put something out about that, really.
Yeah, well, Philip K. Dick is a bit of a rabbit hole to go down all by itself. And especially when you start looking at his background. We can touch on that in the video in a minute.
Yeah.
Because it's really a rabbit hole, but all by itself. But I always think with science fiction, it's such a... I get annoyed when they lump science fiction in with fantasy, because I think they're two very distinct genres. But there is
very different
overlap
reading experience.
Yeah, there is overlaps. You get the books that are science fiction that feel like fantasy, or fantasy that feel like science fiction. Things like the Gene Wolfe's Shadow of the Torturer feels like a fantasy book, but it is in fact science fiction. The Many Colored Land by Julian May, that is another science fiction one that feels like fantasy. I'm trying to think of ones that do the other way round, that are fantasy, that are real science fiction. Oh, then you get to stuff like the Dying Earth books.
I was about to say Jack Vance probably
Jack
in
Vance,
there, right? Or Ursula K. Le
they're a
Guin,
little...
like that.
I think that's a genre all by itself, because his books, even though they are technically, you could say they're science fiction but feel like fantasy, I think they're more fantasy, because... Or the Book of Swords by Fred Saberhagen, which is, I think, about 11 books.
I think it depends what you want, because you can say, right, this is science fiction because of the nature of the world and the themes inside it, or you could say this is science fiction because of the way it reads and the experience of reading the book. So, like, for me, like, fantasy has to feel like fantasy, which means it's to do with the prose, to the tropes, the way that the narrative is framed. Whereas science fiction, a lot of people class science fiction based on, this has time travel in it, so it has to be science fiction. Or this has, technology in it that doesn't exist in the world, therefore it has to be science fiction, or something, or it's dealing with dystopian themes, so it has to be science fiction. Whereas fantasy, for me, for something to be fantasy, it's more about the reading experience, really, than the actual content.
Yeah, I suppose that's quite a good classification, really.
It's a big subject. I mean, we could talk forever about this one. Really.
I know, because
this is a huge rabbit hole to fall down on an episode of Podcasty thing, but
because the other problem you get is with science fiction, you get all the subgenres, and I don't go down rabbit holes of subgenres, because I think science fiction and fantasy have got the same problem that heavy metal has. All these subgenres. It used to be just, this is heavy metal, this is thrash metal. Now you get grindcore,
thrash metal, black metal,
whatever. I don't know. It gets all really confusing. I don't know. And science fiction and fantasy have a similar thing. You have people go down rabbit holes trying to put things in subgenres, and when in some ways I think the broader strokes are better to keep it in. Say, this is science fiction, and then you get confusing ones when you start going on down to planetary romances and things like that, and then people assume, because of the term, they assume it's about romance. No, it's not. It's about planets.
It's more about adventure, right?
Yeah, it's a good example of a planetary romance. Probably is the Heliconia books by Brian Aldiss, because it's all about the planets. It's all about what's going on there. But yeah, you can go down all. But you get even the other problem even when you're classifying times of science fiction, from the golden age to the pre-pulp era to the new wave, even that gets blurred between lines. Like, I think officially they say that the golden age ends around 1947, but then Brian Aldiss always reckoned it finished in 1963, and the new wave started in 1963 when Dune was published.
Yeah.
Because it was
I mean, it depends which book you choose. What's the first book in a movement?
Yeah.
Hard to say.
Yeah, but yeah, it's all a big rabbit hole. Things to go that could keep you going for days.
Yeah, it's I think we could do a video on that on its own, really.
Yeah, we might have to at some point.
Yeah. Definitely.
So I have, what have I got coming out soon? I've got some of the stuff that I was meant to finish off last month that's due to be out. I've got 3 classic sci-fi ones I've had sat uploaded that I've not released because I didn't want to release it with a load of April stuff.
Yeah, that's understandable.
So I will probably release those. I've got 3 of them, yeah. So those will be coming out hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and I've got some stuff I wanted to record. Obviously, the Philip K. Dick one that we are going to just about to do, which probably will be out before this podcast will be out, because I think, and my normal stuff and just normal ramblings from me. I've got a new dog to introduce to people.
Lovely.
Because we have our 2 little ones. We were missing our big Labrador that obviously we sadly lost last year, and it came across that we could have a local shelter had a bunch of puppies.
Oh.
And these are Staffies crossed with Shar-Peis.
Yeah.
And our one seems to have inherited a lot of the Shar-Pei things and has got a really wrinkly head.
Has it got like a people face? They always crack me up.
Yeah. So I was going to do a little video, say, hello, this is them. But yeah. And she's called Lilu, if you know the reference.
From Lilo and Stitch?
Nah.
No?
Fifth Element.
Oh, what? Of course, yes.
Fifth Element. One of my favourite all-time movies.
Yeah. Luc Besson, that's a great movie.
Yeah.
I got the 4K, is it Director's Cut Remaster?
Yes,
edition.
I've got that.
And I watched it about 4 or 5 months ago. Because that movie, when I saw that at the cinema, that's the kind of movie, like when you see it at the cinema, it's just like, this was made for the big screen.
Yeah, I always say if people don't like that, they're unhinged and should be flogged in the streets.
Yeah.
So I'm running around a lot going multi-pass now.
Yeah.
But yes, so I have a new doglet who looks like an old woman. And that's it. I'm all dogged out now, because I said we've always had 2 dogs, so now I've got 3. But I said, well, the 2 little ones count as 1.
Yeah, like Voltron or something.
Yeah. So I'll probably do a video on that. It's nothing to do with books, but I'll probably do that because before she appears, little wrinkly Shar-Pei Staffy cross. It's a weird cross. Why would you do that? And that's it. Book-wise, I don't think I've got anything else I can think about. There's the Wheel of Time rabbit hole. I'm just going down. That's it. Yeah. So have you got anything else that you wish to add?
No, I think that's us. I think we managed to squeeze just into an hour.
What time is it saying going on? 59 minutes. Yes.
There
and I
you
think
go.
there's less. Before we've done about an hour 20, but then I've ended up having to take about 20 minutes out of it.
Yeah.
So this will probably be about 55 minutes. So anyway, so hopefully less stuff. So I'll just say goodbye to anybody, and thank you for anybody who's watching this or listening to this. And I hope our ramblings are keeping people.
Please come back. We need the audience.
Yeah. Keep you busy while you're hoovering or walking a dog or something. Anyway, so bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.